First of all, I would like to tell you our first demand that we have for the government today, which is to end all agro-fuel use. Declaration is that we want 10% cuts in carbon by the end of 2010.
I hope everyone here is signed up to the 10-10 campaign. I hope you're reading your meters now and working out what you've got to do to make sure you don't just sign up, but you actually achieve your pledge.
We need a national programme which would make every home a warm home, so we don't have tens of thousands of old people dying in the winter, so that poor people have fuel bills they can afford, not fuel bills they can't afford, and so the energy companies don't exploit people by charging them over the odds. We've got to have a different way of doing it. It could be done in 10 years. If government takes the lead and councils deliver, we could have a Britain where 27% of the emissions, which are the emissions that come from our homes, don't come from our homes.
And the last point, my fourth demand, is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is enormously important. We waste an enormous amount of energy in our cars, in our homes, in badly insulated buildings.
Our next demand is that all domestic flights are banned immediately.
Yes! I live in and represent the community that's at the forefront, at the front line of the battle against climate change in this country. I represent the communities around Heathrow. And there's no use Prime Ministers or Secretaries of State going to Copenhagen and signing treaties and then coming back and promoting a third runway at Heathrow. It's hypocrisy and cant.
Now, one of the demands is that in 2010 all domestic flights are banned. We'll be told that's ridiculous. But it's not so ridiculous, is it, as building a third runway at Heathrow in the face of runaway climate change. A third runway at Heathrow, if built, and I don't believe it ever will be, a third runway at Heathrow will make Heathrow the biggest single emitter of CO2 emissions in the UK. That's what I call ridiculous.
We gave up flying in 2002 as our bit to reduce our carbon emissions personally. And then 2 years ago, thank you very much. 2 years ago, my sister decided she was moving to Australia, which has put a little bit of pressure on my decision. And this year, it's been my grandma's 90th birthday, and she lives in America. And on a personal level, I promised her that I would go and celebrate her birthday with her. Her daughter, my mum, died a long time ago, and so I'm her closest relative. And it was really tough on a personal level not to go. So I sat there crying on the day before, and then I made the decision, a good decision, to send her the money that I would have spent on the flight. And she went and had a perm, she went out for a meal, she's had a great time. And there are things we can do other than flying, even though it's tough. Our next demand is that the government introduce a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit nationwide and scrap the roads programme.
It's all very well saying that to people, but the most important thing we've got to do is that we've got to get public money now, the kind of money they spent on the bankers, the kind of money they want to spend on the Trident nuclear weapons, and we need to develop a completely cheap, integrated public transport system throughout Britain. That's what we need to do if we want drivers to get out of their cars.
Our next demand is that the government immediately declares a state of climate emergency. They are not taking it seriously enough.
80% of the Arctic ocean ice by volume has disappeared. This October's figures for ice cover were a record October low. The world around us is changing fast. The scientists are struggling to catch up with it, and the politicians are way behind the scientists. So that even the most unrealistically optimistic evaluation of what is politically possible begins to fall short of what the latest science reveals we need to do. And with each year of emissions reducing opportunity wasted, the scale of what we need to do swells ever more unfeasibly larger.
People over the next couple of weeks, our representatives are talking about cuts for 2020 and 2050, and I'm 21 now. That makes me 62 when these 2050 cuts, like if we get to then, these will be realised.
And I'm haunted by some words of the main character, the sole survivor, who looks back to 2009, he looks back to today, and he says, why is it that knowing what they knew then, didn't they act while there was still time? And that to me is the most important question of our time. Why have we still failed to galvanise the political will that we need to tackle climate change? So let me just finish by saying that some people think we'll never be able to persuade politicians to act on such a radical agenda. That while it might be economically and technically possible to deal with climate change, some people say it's not politically possible. Well, I think we're here today to change the definition of what is politically possible. Scientists tell us we have within 10 years in which emissions need to peak and then fall. That means it falls to this generation, it falls to our generation, it falls to us to act. Now that is an awesome responsibility, but it is also an amazing opportunity that we are here today and we can do this.
Nationality, religion doesn't matter anymore. We're out of time for power lines dividing rich and poor. We'll sink and stand together as the weather goes to war. So, no delay, we are the ones who can say we got the power to stay. We're gonna fight all the way, we're gonna make it okay. Everything's changing today.
Our final demand at the campaign against climate change. This is for the creation of 1 million green jobs by the end of 2010.
Is there any Vestas workers here? I know they're here somewhere, but there they are, they're over there. Oh, they're right at the back. Can we have a big hand for the Vestas workers? They've showed us something really important. Don't forget about Copenhagen for a minute. Something really important is happening in this country. The trade union movement, the labour movement, and the working people are beginning to take on this issue and beginning to think about how they can take action to enforce it. That's all of us. We've all got jobs. And we all need to take up that demand for 1 million jobs, climate jobs, jobs which are really going to help us get out of this mess. And the government has to be prepared to spend. And if there's a green industry that's going down because the bosses want to move it somewhere else to make more money, like Vestas did, then we should nationalise that industry and put it under workers' control and produce the wind turbines we want.
Come and get a job in renewable energy. You get a mortgage, start a family, the future's in green. Technology, skilled work, lifetime guarantee. The pay is good, but the hours are long. Can't complain if you haven't got a union. Breathing hard on the factory floor. If you don't like it, you know where the door is. Windmill, turn it on. Boys on the balcony standing strong. Winds are waving sun. This is a fight that must be won. Windmill, turn it on. Boys on the balcony standing strong. We're working a world where the turbines spin. This is a battle we all must win.
If money can be found to bail out capitalism in its hour of need, if money can be found to fund illegal and murderous wars across the planet, with tens of billions of pounds lost to the public exchequer through tax avoidance and tax evasion measures of the super rich, then money can and must be found to tackle climate change. And money can be found for the massive programme of public investment in genuine new climate jobs, in public buildings, in insulation of homes, in developing a clean public transport system, in upgrading an antiquated national grid, of investing in renewable energy.
Well, our message today is that green jobs isn't about sacrifice. Our message today is about warm homes and decent public transport. That's not about sacrifice. The truth is that climate change policies are positive policies that will make our lives better.
Hear a lot of talk about a thing they call global warming. Seems to me it's time to listen now and take it as a warning. Better make life sustainable somehow.